The people with the least to give are often the ones who change a stranger's life forever. The November wind swept through downtown Chicago like an icy warning, sending dried leaves skittering across the sidewalk, while hurried strangers buried their faces behind scarves and expensive coats. Nobody looked up. Nobody slowed down. In a city overflowing with millions of people, compassion had quietly become the rarest currency. Caleb Turner pulled the zipper of his faded navy jacket a little higher before reaching into his pocket. His fingers found exactly $12.34. That was all he had until another repair job came through, if one came through at all. He stopped in front of a small neighborhood deli, studying the handwritten menu taped to the window. After paying the overdue electric bill that morning, this was the only money left to carry him through the day. He glanced at the photo tucked inside his worn wallet. A smiling 8-year-old girl with bright blue eyes. Lily. His daughter had kissed him goodbye before school with a cheerful smile that hid how carefully she rationed every bite of breakfast whenever money became tight. She never complained. She simply said she wasn't very hungry. Caleb knew better. He stepped inside and ordered the cheapest turkey sandwich on the menu. "Just the sandwich?" the cashier asked. He hesitated before forcing a smile. "That's enough." The warm paper bag felt almost luxurious in his freezing hands as he stepped back onto the crowded sidewalk. He hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon, but at least tonight he would have enough strength to finish the emergency furnace repair scheduled across town. Then he noticed her. A young woman sat alone beside the entrance to the subway station, wrapped in an oversized gray coat that looked several sizes too big. Snowflakes had begun collecting in her light brown hair. Her shoes were worn, her hands trembled from the cold, and a cardboard sign rested beside her. "Hungry. God bless." People passed without making eye contact. Some tightened their grip on designer handbags. Others crossed the street entirely. One businessman accidentally kicked over the paper cup lying beside her. He didn't even apologize. The woman quietly picked it up herself. Caleb slowed. He looked at the sandwich. Then back at the woman. His stomach growled loudly enough for him to hear. He could keep walking. No one would judge him. After all, he wasn't much better off than she was. He took 3 more steps before stopping completely. With a tired sigh, he turned around. The woman looked up as his boots stopped in front of her. "I'm sorry," Caleb said softly. "It isn't much, but it's warm." He placed the unopened sandwich into her shaking hands. For several seconds she simply stared at it as though she couldn't understand what had happened. You're giving this to me?" she whispered. Caleb smiled. "I can skip one meal." He couldn't. But she didn't need to know that. Her eyes glistened instantly. "Thank you?" "No," Caleb replied gently. "Just promise me you'll eat it while it's still warm." Without waiting for another word, he slipped his hands into his pockets and walked away into the freezing wind. The woman watched him disappear into the sea of strangers, her fingers tightening around the still warm sandwich. Hidden beneath the loose sleeve of her oversized coat, she quietly pressed a tiny concealed button sewn into the cuff. Somewhere several blocks away, inside an unmarked SUV, a red recording light blinked to life. Claire Whitmore lowered her eyes toward the sandwich resting in her lap. For the first time that entire day, the billionaire CEO no longer felt like she was conducting an experiment. She felt like she had just met the first genuinely kind man in a city that had forgotten how to look at another human being. A person's greatest battles are usually the ones no one else can see. Caleb Turner didn't stop walking until the warmth of the sandwich was only a memory in his empty hands. The icy wind bit through his worn jacket as he crossed 3 busy intersections toward the south side, where old brick apartment buildings leaned against one another like tired old men refusing to fall. Every storefront seemed to advertise things he could no longer afford: fresh coffee, winter boots, holiday decorations that reminded families Christmas was only weeks away. For Caleb, Christmas wasn't measured in gifts anymore. It was measured in bills. He climbed the narrow staircase to apartment 3B, careful not to wake Mrs. Alvarez from downstairs, whose television was always loud enough to echo through the building. Before unlocking the door, he forced the exhaustion off his face. Lily deserved a father who smiled when he came home. The tiny apartment smelled faintly of laundry detergent and tomato soup. "Dad!" 8-year-old Lily rushed toward him wearing an oversized yellow sweater and fuzzy socks, wrapping both arms around his waist before he even had time to close the door. "You're home early." "I finished faster than I expected," Caleb lied, brushing a loose strand of blonde hair away from her face. In truth, the emergency furnace repair had been cancelled. Another paycheck had disappeared before he ever had the chance to earn it. "Guess what?" Lily grinned. "I got an A on my science project." "You did?" She proudly held up a construction paper volcano that leaned slightly to one side. "It erupted better than everybody else's." Caleb laughed, a genuine laugh this time. "I never doubted you." For a few precious minutes, the apartment felt warm despite the draft sneaking through the old windows. Then Lily looked toward the kitchen. "Did you eat lunch today?" The question landed harder than she realized. Caleb smiled without hesitation. "Of course." "What did you have?" He thought for half a second. "A turkey sandwich." She nodded, satisfied. "I knew it. Turkey's your favorite." He swallowed quietly. "It sure is." As Lily disappeared into her bedroom to finish homework, Caleb opened the nearly empty refrigerator. Half a carton of milk. 3 eggs. A stick of butter. Nothing else. He carefully poured the last of the tomato soup into a small saucepan, adding extra water to make it look like more than it was. He would tell Lily he wasn't hungry. Again. Later that evening, after Lily had fallen asleep on the couch with a library book resting against her chest, Caleb quietly covered her with an old blanket before opening the kitchen drawer where unpaid envelopes had begun to pile up. Past due rent. Electric bill. Medical invoice. Another reminder from the pediatric cardiology clinic. His smile slowly disappeared. He picked up the newest letter and unfolded it beneath the dim kitchen light. The next examination for Lily's heart condition had been scheduled for the following week. The estimated payment due before treatment made his chest tighten. He closed his eyes. Not because he was afraid. Because he had absolutely no idea where the money would come from. Outside, snow continued falling across Chicago. Several miles away, inside the top floor of Whitmore Holdings headquarters, Claire Whitmore sat alone in her office, still wearing the same oversized gray coat she had used during the day's experiment. Her executive assistant entered quietly. "Miss Whitmore, the security team reviewed today's footage." Claire didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stared at the untouched gourmet dinner waiting on her desk. For some reason, she couldn't bring herself to eat it. Finally, she looked up. "I want every second of the recording from the man who gave away his lunch." The assistant blinked. "Should we identify him?" Claire's eyes lingered on the memory of his tired smile. "Yes," she said softly. "And find out why someone with almost nothing was willing to give away everything he had. Sometimes the richest person in the room is the one searching hardest for something money can never buy." By 7 the next morning, the 42nd floor of Whitmore Holdings buzzed with quiet efficiency. Executives hurried through polished hallways carrying tablets and coffee, assistants coordinated meetings down to the minute, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a city just beginning to wake beneath a blanket of fresh snow. Claire Whitmore barely noticed any of it. She sat alone inside the executive screening room, her tailored black suit replacing yesterday's oversized gray coat. On the massive screen before her, security footage replayed in perfect silence. There he was again. The tired man in the faded navy jacket. He stopped. He hesitated. He looked at the sandwich. Then at her. Claire leaned forward. Every member of her security team expected the man to keep walking. The behavioral consultants hired for the experiment had predicted the same outcome. According to months of research, fewer than 2% of people would willingly give away food if they believed it was their final meal of the day. Yet Caleb Turner had done exactly that. Not for recognition. Not because cameras surrounded him. simply because another human being looked hungrier than he was. "Replay it," Claire said quietly. The technician nodded. For the fourth time that morning, the recording began again. This time she watched his face instead of his actions. No pity. No performance. No hesitation after he made his decision. Just quiet kindness. Her chief of security, Marcus Hale, entered carrying a thin file. "We identified him." Claire looked up immediately. "So soon? He isn't difficult to find." Marcus placed the folder on the conference table. "Caleb Turner, 36. Licensed HVAC technician. Widower." Claire's expression softened. "Widower?" Marcus nodded. "His wife, Emily, died 4 years ago in a traffic accident." The room fell silent. "He has one daughter. Lily. 8 years old." Claire slowly opened the folder. A school photo smiled back at her. Bright blue eyes. Missing front tooth. The same smile she had seen tucked inside Caleb's old wallet. Marcus continued. "He works freelance because it gives him flexibility to care for his daughter. Income has been inconsistent for almost a year." Claire flipped through more pages. Lake utility notices. Property tax records. Medical debt. Everything painted the same picture. A man quietly drowning while trying to keep his child afloat. "And the sandwich?" she asked. Marcus hesitated. "Our investigators confirmed he hadn't eaten since the previous afternoon." Claire looked up sharply. "So it really was his last meal?" "Yes." For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally Marcus broke the silence. "Would you like us to contact him?" Claire slowly closed the folder. "No." He frowned. "No? If we approach him now, he'll know this was never real." She stood and walked toward the enormous window overlooking downtown Chicago. "I don't want gratitude that comes from opportunity." She watched pedestrians hurrying below, each one carrying invisible burdens. "I want to know whether yesterday was who he truly is, or simply one extraordinary moment." Marcus understood immediately. "You want another test?" Claire nodded. "A harder one." Later that afternoon, she left the headquarters without her driver, without her security detail, and without the expensive wardrobe that usually announced her status before she spoke a single word. An hour later, the billionaire CEO once again became an anonymous woman wearing the same oversized gray coat, faded jeans, worn boots, and a knitted beanie pulled low over her hair. This time, however, she wasn't waiting for chance. She knew exactly where Caleb Turner would finish his next repair job. And for the first time in years, Claire wasn't interested in evaluating an employee, negotiating a billion-dollar acquisition, or impressing a board of directors. She was searching for the truth about one ordinary father whose quiet kindness had already begun changing something inside her. Character isn't revealed by one good deed, it is revealed when kindness becomes a habit. The next afternoon, snow drifted lazily across the streets as Caleb finished repairing a broken heating unit in an aging apartment complex on the west side of Chicago. He wiped the grease from his hands with an old shop towel before thanking the elderly landlord, who handed him a folded envelope. "I'm sorry, Caleb," the man said apologetically. "Business has been slow. I can only pay half today." Caleb looked inside. $120. Barely enough to cover groceries, let alone Lily's medical bills. Still, he smiled. "I appreciate it." "You always do." Caleb simply shrugged before walking toward his aging pickup truck. On the opposite side of the street, Claire Whitmore watched everything from inside a small neighborhood coffee shop. She had arrived nearly an hour earlier, dressed once again in worn jeans, a gray coat, and a knitted beanie that concealed her recognizable appearance. No luxury watch rested on her wrist. No bodyguards waited nearby. To everyone around her, she looked like another struggling woman trying to escape the cold. Marcus's voice came softly through the hidden earpiece. "He's leaving now. I see him. You don't have to do this yourself." Claire ignored the comment. Some truths could never be found through reports or surveillance footage. They had to be experienced. She stepped outside just as Caleb climbed into his truck. Before he could start the engine, Claire approached carefully. "Excuse me." Caleb lowered the window. "Yes?" She hesitated, allowing genuine uncertainty to show on her face. "I'm sorry to bother you." He waited patiently. "My phone died and I don't have enough money for the bus." She looked down. "I just need to get to Lincoln Avenue." Caleb glanced at the cracked fuel gauge inside his truck. Almost empty. He mentally calculated the remaining gasoline. Enough to get home. Or enough to help her. Not both. For a brief moment, the silence stretched between them. Then he unlocked the passenger door. "Hop in." Claire blinked. "You don't even know me." He smiled faintly. "I didn't know the last person I helped either." The words caught her completely off guard. As the truck rolled through the snowy streets, the heater rattled weakly, blowing barely warm air into the cab. "I'm Caleb," he said. "Claire." She intentionally offered only her first name. "You from around here?" "Not really." "You got family in the city?" She hesitated. "No." For the first time in years, that answer felt painfully true. Despite having wealth beyond imagination, she couldn't remember the last dinner she had shared with someone who wanted nothing from her. Caleb didn't ask any more questions. Instead, he reached behind the seat and handed her a pair of knitted gloves. "My daughter made me carry these." Claire looked at them. "They're children's gloves. They're the only spare pair I've got. I couldn't." "You can." He laughed quietly. "Lily says cold hands make people grumpy." Against her better judgment, Claire smiled. "They're warm. I told you." Several minutes later, they arrived near the address she had requested. As Claire opened the truck door, she noticed Caleb glance discreetly at the nearly empty fuel gauge. Helping her had cost him almost all the gasoline he had left. Yet there wasn't the slightest hint of regret on his face. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "Take care of yourself." "You too." She stepped onto the sidewalk and watched the old pickup disappear into traffic. Marcus's voice returned through her earpiece. "Well?" Claire remained silent for several seconds. Yesterday he had given away his only meal. Today he had sacrificed the fuel he needed to get home. Neither act had earned him applause. Neither had benefited him in any way. She slowly removed the tiny knitted gloves from her hands and held them carefully, as though they were priceless. Then she whispered the words Marcus never expected to hear. "This isn't an experiment anymore. It's personal. The hardest test of integrity comes when doing the right thing means standing completely alone." 3 days later, Caleb's phone rang just after sunrise. "Mr. Turner?" a cheerful receptionist asked. "We have an emergency heating repair at Whitmore Heights Residences. Can you be there by 8? Caleb looked at the calendar hanging beside the refrigerator. Lily's cardiology appointment was circled in red for tomorrow. "I'll be there." Any job was a good job. Especially now. Whitmore Heights was unlike anywhere Caleb normally worked. Marble floors reflected crystal chandeliers, fresh flowers decorated the lobby, and every employee wore perfectly tailored uniforms. The monthly maintenance fee for one apartment probably exceeded his annual rent. He suddenly felt out of place. The building manager greeted him politely. "The boiler issue is on the penthouse level." Caleb nodded and followed the private elevator upward. Inside another elevator, hidden several floors below, Claire watched his arrival through a discreet security monitor. Marcus folded his arms. "You arranged all this?" "I arranged the repair request." "You didn't tell him who owns the building?" "No." Marcus sighed. "I still don't understand." Claire looked thoughtfully at the monitor. "I've seen how he treats someone with nothing." She paused. "Today I want to see how he treats someone who has everything." Minutes later, Caleb finished inspecting the heating system outside the penthouse mechanical room. The problem was simple. A damaged pressure valve. He replaced the part, restarted the system, and packed away his tools. As he turned to leave, voices echoed from farther down the hallway. A housekeeper knelt on the polished floor, desperately collecting broken pieces of expensive porcelain scattered across the marble. An older supervisor stood over her. "What were you thinking?" "I'm so sorry," the woman whispered through tears. "It slipped. That vase costs more than 6 months of your salary." "I know." "Then perhaps you'll enjoy explaining that to human resources." The woman lowered her head, unable to speak. Several residents walked past without slowing down. Some watched. None intervened. Caleb quietly set down his toolbox. "Excuse me." The supervisor turned. "This doesn't concern you." "Maybe not." Caleb glanced at the terrified housekeeper. "But accidents happen. The replacement cost comes out of her paycheck." "That doesn't seem fair." The supervisor frowned. "And who exactly are you?" "The repair technician." "Then repair the boiler and leave personnel matters to management." Caleb knew he should walk away. He needed this payment. He couldn't afford conflict. Yet he couldn't ignore the frightened expression on the woman's face. He reached into his wallet. Inside rested the $120 he had earned 2 days earlier. Nearly everything he had. He slowly removed the bills. "Use this." Both employees stared at him. "It's not enough to replace the vase," Caleb admitted. "But maybe it'll show she isn't alone." The housekeeper's eyes filled with tears. "I can't accept your money." "You don't have to." He placed the folded bills gently into her trembling hands anyway. The supervisor looked almost embarrassed. "This isn't your responsibility." Caleb smiled softly. "Sometimes responsibility isn't assigned." He picked up his toolbox and walked toward the elevator without waiting for another reply. Neither he nor anyone else noticed the tiny security camera mounted above the hallway artwork. Inside the private monitoring room, complete silence filled the space. Marcus slowly exhaled. He just gave away almost everything he earned this week. Claire never took her eyes off the screen. She had expected kindness. She had even expected generosity. She had not expected courage. Helping a stranger on the street required compassion. Standing up to authority when it could cost his livelihood required something far rarer. Claire felt an unfamiliar ache in her chest. For years, countless people had tried to impress her because of her wealth. But this man had no idea she was watching. Every decent thing he had done had been performed when he believed no reward would ever come. And for the first time since inheriting a billion-dollar empire, Claire found herself wondering whether the poorest man she had ever met possessed the kind of wealth she had spent her entire life trying to find. Life has a strange way of testing the people who refuse to stop doing good. The following morning, Caleb sat beside Lily in the pediatric cardiology clinic at Chicago Children's Medical Center. The waiting room was unusually quiet. Children colored in activity books while anxious parents pretended not to read the bills hidden inside their folders. Lily swung her feet beneath the chair. "Dad?" "Yeah, sweetheart?" "When my heart gets better." He smiled. "It will. Can we go camping again?" The question transported him back years before Emily had died. Weekend campfires. Sticky marshmallows. Lily laughing beneath a sky full of stars. "We'll go," Caleb promised. "The first weekend the doctor says you're ready." She grinned. "Can we make burnt pancakes again?" He laughed. "I think that's tradition." A nurse appeared at the doorway. "Lily Turner?" The examination lasted nearly an hour. Dr. Karen Mitchell studied the newest scans before removing her glasses. "Lily is doing well." Caleb released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "But," that single word froze the room. "The condition is progressing more slowly than we hoped." She turned the monitor toward him. "Medication alone won't solve the problem forever." Caleb already knew what was coming. "Surgery?" The doctor nodded gently. "Not immediately. But within the next several months." She handed him another folder. "Our financial counselors can discuss payment options." Caleb accepted. It was shaking hands. He didn't open it until Lily skipped ahead toward the elevator, happily talking about stopping for hot chocolate on the way home. Estimated patient responsibility, $84,600. His vision blurred. Not because of the number. Because he couldn't even imagine the path toward reaching it. Across town, Claire sat through a board meeting that seemed to last forever. Executives debated international acquisitions, investment forecasts, quarterly profits. No one noticed Claire wasn't paying attention. Instead, she quietly reviewed another report Marcus had prepared overnight. Medical debt, income history, school records, volunteer references. Everything confirmed the same conclusion. Caleb Turner had never asked anyone for help. Not once. Even while carrying burdens that would have crushed most people. Claire finally closed the folder. Cancel my afternoon meetings. The board members looked at one another in surprise. The negotiations with Zurich? They can wait. Half an hour later, Marcus joined her inside the executive office. You've been investigating Lily's medical case. It wasn't a question. Claire nodded. I have. We could anonymously pay every bill today. We could. Marcus frowned. So why don't we? Claire walked toward the window overlooking the Chicago skyline. Because if I solve every problem with money... She paused. I'll never know whether he would have accepted help from a stranger. Marcus considered her words carefully. You think he'd refuse? I think he'd accept hardship before accepting charity. Silence settled between them. Finally Claire made a decision. Arrange another meeting. Marcus blinked. In disguise? No. She looked down at the tiny knitted gloves Lily had made, which still rested inside her desk drawer. Not this time. Then how? Claire smiled thoughtfully. I'll let him meet the real me. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That's a dangerous move. For whom? For you. She understood exactly what he meant. The moment Caleb learned her identity, everything between them would change forever. Every conversation. Every act of kindness. Every memory. He might even hate her for turning his hardest days into an experiment. Claire quietly accepted that possibility. Some truths came with consequences. That evening, Caleb tucked Lily into bed before sitting alone at the small kitchen table. The unopened hospital estimate lay beside the overdue rent notice. He stared at both pieces of paper for a long time. Then, without saying a word, he folded them neatly and placed them inside the same envelope. He refused to let Lily see them. She deserved one more peaceful night's sleep. Outside the apartment window, the first lights of Christmas began appearing across the neighborhood. Inside a luxurious penthouse only a few miles away, Claire stood before a mirror, looking not at the billionaire reflected in the glass, but at the woman who had spent days searching for a man she could no longer stop thinking about. Tomorrow, their worlds would finally collide without any disguises. And neither of them would leave that meeting the same person. The truth has a way of arriving without warning, and once it does, nothing can return to the way it was before. The next afternoon, Caleb received an unexpected phone call while replacing an air conditioning unit in a small grocery store. Mr. Turner? Speaking. My name is Sarah Collins. I'm calling from Whitmore Holdings. Caleb paused. I'm afraid you've got the wrong number. We don't. She smiled politely through the phone. Ms. Claire Whitmore would like to meet with you today. Caleb frowned. The CEO? Yes. There must be some mistake. There isn't. The call ended with the address of Whitmore Holdings headquarters and a meeting scheduled for 3 o'clock. For the rest of the afternoon, Caleb couldn't stop wondering why one of the wealthiest women in America wanted to see an ordinary repair technician. By 3 o'clock, he stood inside the soaring marble lobby where everything gleamed with quiet perfection. Employees moved confidently through the building. Caleb felt completely out of place. His work boots left faint traces of melting snow on the polished floor. An assistant greeted him with a warm smile. Mr. Turner? He nodded. This way, please. The private elevator climbed silently toward the executive floor. When the Doors opened. Caleb found himself standing before a pair of enormous oak doors. The assistant gently knocked. "Ms. Whitmore, Mr. Turner is here." "Send him in." Caleb stepped inside. The office overlooked nearly all of downtown Chicago. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the winter skyline. Modern paintings decorated the walls. Everything spoke of unimaginable success. Then he saw her. Claire stood beside the window wearing an elegant navy suit. No gray coat. No knitted beanie. No worn boots. For several long seconds Caleb simply stared. Recognition arrived slowly. Then all at once. "You!" Claire turned toward him. "Hello, Caleb." His eyes widened. "The woman?" "Yes." "The bus stop?" "Yes." "The sandwich?" She lowered her head. "Yes." Silence filled the office. Caleb searched her face, trying to reconcile the struggling stranger he remembered with the billionaire standing before him. "I don't understand." Claire took a slow breath. "You deserve an explanation." She invited him to sit. He remained standing. So she began anyway. "I wasn't homeless. I know that now. I wasn't stranded. I figured." She swallowed. "I was conducting a private social experiment." The words landed like stones. Caleb's shoulders stiffened. "So?" He forced a small laugh that carried no humor. "I was being tested." Claire didn't answer immediately. "At first." His expression changed. "At first?" "Yes." "And after that?" She looked directly into his eyes. "After that, I kept coming back because I wanted to know the man behind the kindness." Caleb looked away. Every memory suddenly felt different. The sandwich. The ride. The gloves Lily had made. None of it had happened the way he believed. "So every conversation," Claire nodded quietly, "was real to me. But it started with a lie." She closed her eyes for a brief moment. "Yes." Neither spoke for nearly a minute. Finally Caleb asked the question that mattered most. "Did you have people following me?" Claire refused to lie again. "Yes." He nodded slowly. "My daughter too." Another painful pause. "Only to understand your circumstances." He stepped backward. "You investigated Lily?" "We learned about her medical condition." Something inside Caleb finally broke. "My little girl didn't ask to become part of your experiment." "I know." "You had no right." "I know." "You watched us struggle." "I know." Each answer sounded quieter than the last. Claire had prepared herself for anger. She had not prepared herself for disappointment. Caleb wasn't shouting. He wasn't threatening. He simply looked wounded. "I gave you my last meal because I thought you needed it." His voice barely rose above a whisper. "I helped you because I believed you were alone." Claire felt tears gathering despite every effort to remain composed. "You changed my life, Caleb." He shook his head. "I never wanted to change your life." He turned toward the door. "I just wanted to help someone I thought was hurting." As the office door quietly closed behind him, Claire remained standing exactly where she was. The silence that followed was heavier than any boardroom defeat she had ever experienced. For the first time in years, the most powerful woman in the city understood that some things could never be bought back. Not trust. Not dignity. And perhaps, not the heart of the only man who had ever seen her as simply another human being. Forgiveness is never earned by words alone. It is earned by the courage to sacrifice something that cannot be replaced. For 2 days, Claire heard nothing from Caleb. She didn't call. She didn't send flowers. She didn't ask Marcus to monitor him anymore. "The investigation ends today," she instructed. Marcus looked surprised. "Completely? Delete every active report. And the surveillance files?" Claire hesitated. "Erase them." Marcus nodded. "Yes, ma'am." For the first time since this strange journey had begun, Claire chose not to know where Caleb was or what he was doing. If she ever earned another conversation with him, it would happen honestly. not because someone tracked his every step. Meanwhile, Caleb buried himself in work. Long hours. Cold rooftops. Broken furnaces. Anything to keep his mind away from the betrayal he couldn't quite forget. Yet every evening, when he came home, Lily noticed something had changed. "Dad? Yeah? You don't smile as much." He forced one anyway. "I'm just tired." She wasn't convinced. That Friday afternoon, Caleb received another call from Chicago Children's Medical Center. His stomach tightened immediately. "Mr. Turner, we'd like you to come in today. Is Lily okay? Please come as soon as possible." The drive to the hospital felt endless. Every terrible possibility crossed his mind. When he finally reached Dr. Mitchell's office, she greeted him with an expression he couldn't read. "I have something unusual to show you." She handed him a folder. Inside was a letter from an anonymous donor, along with a single-page confirmation. Outstanding balance, paid in full. Future surgery fund, fully established. Estimated treatment costs, guaranteed. Caleb stared at the pages in disbelief. There has to be some mistake. There isn't. Who did this? The donor requested complete anonymity. He already knew. Claire. He closed the folder. "I can't accept this." Dr. Mitchell looked at him kindly. "The funds have already been transferred into an irrevocable medical trust. I need to return them." "I'm afraid that's impossible." Caleb rubbed both hands across his face. "This isn't right." The doctor smiled gently. "Perhaps. But sometimes people choose kindness without expecting permission." Those words lingered long after he left the hospital. Kindness without expecting permission. Hadn't he done exactly that when he offered his last sandwich? That evening, a simple envelope appeared beneath Claire's office door. No company logo. No return address. Only her name written carefully across the front. Inside rested the tiny knitted gloves Lily had made. Folded beside them was a handwritten note. Claire unfolded it with trembling hands. "I can't pretend what happened didn't hurt. Trust is difficult to rebuild once it's broken. You had every resource in the world, but you chose deception. That part will always be painful. Thank you for helping, Lily. I know why you hid your name. Maybe you believed I would refuse. Maybe you're right. But if kindness means anything, it should be honest from the beginning. These gloves belong to the woman I thought I met. If she still exists somewhere behind the title of CEO, I hope she finds her way back. Caleb." Claire read the letter again. Then once more. By the third time, tears blurred every line. Marcus quietly entered the office. "I heard the hospital accepted the donation." Claire nodded. "He knows. I assumed he would." Marcus noticed the gloves resting on her desk. "He returned them." "No." Claire carefully picked them up. "He returned the disguise." She looked through the window at the city stretching endlessly below. For years she had measured success in acquisitions, profits, and market share. Now one handwritten letter from a struggling father had exposed a failure no balance sheet could ever reveal. She whispered softly into the empty office. "You were right, Caleb. I forgot how to help people without hiding behind power." Outside, the first heavy snow of winter began covering Chicago in white. And somewhere across the city, either of them realized that fate was preparing one final meeting, one that neither money nor pride would be able to control. The greatest rewards in life are never the ones we receive. They are the lives we quietly change along the way. Christmas Eve arrived beneath a sky filled with slow-falling snow. Chicago shimmered beneath thousands of tiny lights. Inside their small apartment, Lily carefully hung a paper star on the crooked Christmas tree she and Caleb had found at a neighborhood charity sale. "It's beautiful," Caleb said. She smiled proudly. "It leans a little." "So do we." She giggled. "And we're still standing." For the first time in months, Caleb allowed himself to believe she was right. The surgery was funded. The future no longer looked impossible. There were still bills. Still long workdays. Still grief. But there was hope. And hope was enough. That same evening, Claire quietly slipped away from the city's most exclusive charity gala. Hundreds of cameras waited outside. Reporters hoped to photograph another glamorous appearance from America's youngest billionaire CEO. Instead, Claire climbed into an ordinary sedan with Marcus. No security convoy? No. No photographers? No. Marcus smiled faintly. You've changed. Claire looked out the snowy window. I'm trying to. They stopped. Outside a modest neighborhood church, families gathered for the annual Christmas concert. Children laughed. Neighbors embraced. No one recognized the woman walking inside wearing a simple wool coat. Claire chose a seat in the very last row. Halfway through the service, a children's choir stepped onto the stage. Lily stood among them. Her small voice blended with dozens of others as they sang about peace, hope, and second chances. Claire quietly wiped away a tear. When the concert ended, parents filled the hallway. Caleb helped Lily button her winter coat. As they stepped outside into the softly falling snow, he noticed someone standing beneath a nearby street lamp. Claire. Neither moved for several seconds. Finally, she walked forward. I wasn't sure you wanted to see me. Caleb studied her. No designer clothes. No assistants. No bodyguards. Just Claire. I almost left. But you stayed. I did. She took a careful breath. I didn't come to explain myself again. I know. I came because your letter was right. She looked down before continuing. I spent so many years believing that helping people required strategy, control, distance. I forgot that kindness begins with honesty. Caleb remained silent. Claire reached into her pocket. She held out the tiny knitted gloves. I think these belong with the person who made them. Before Caleb could answer, Lily looked up. Daddy? He nodded. This is Claire. Lily smiled immediately. The lady from the bus stop. Claire laughed softly through unexpected tears. Yes. I'm sorry I never told you who I really was. Lily tilted her head. My teacher says saying sorry is important. Claire smiled. Your teacher is very wise. Lily accepted the gloves. Mom always said people can make mistakes. Caleb looked at his daughter in surprise. She continued quietly. But they don't have to stay mistakes. The word settled over all three of them. Claire slowly knelt until she was eye level with Lily. Thank you? For what? For reminding me what I forgot. Lily slipped one tiny hand into Claire's. Without hesitation. Without suspicion. Without conditions. Caleb watched the moment unfold. Children, he realized often, reach forgiveness long before adults learn how. He stepped closer. I don't know what happens next. Claire nodded honestly. Neither do I. But this time. She offered a small, genuine smile. There won't be any disguises. Caleb returned the smile for the first time since learning the truth. No. There won't. Snow continued falling as they walked slowly toward the church parking lot together. Not as a billionaire and a struggling father. Not as a woman being tested or a man unknowingly taking part in an experiment. Simply as two imperfect people who had discovered that true wealth was never measured by the money someone could give away. It was measured by the courage to give away pride, to ask for forgiveness, to accept grace, and to choose kindness even after trust had been broken. And somewhere above the glowing Christmas lights of Chicago, Emily's memory seemed to linger like the gentle snowfall itself, as if quietly reminding Caleb that love never truly disappears. Sometimes, it simply finds a different way to come home.